Clap. Yay. Okay, everyone. So today I'm going to share with you 5 of my most powerful tips for healthy communication in marriage. And I want to start with a story first that kind of illustrates something that might feel familiar, and then we'll dive into the tips. And if you have questions, you can pop them into the chat box and we will look at those at the end and go through them then. And so the story that I wanted to share with you today was about a client of mine. Her name was Christy, and she was a mom to an 8-year-old little boy, actually a stepmom to an 8-year-old little boy. And she had been his stepmom since he was 2 years old. So this has been going on for a long time now. And there was actually a nanny who was that came with the little boy when he came to stay with her and her husband. It was just part of the arrangement between the mom and the stepmom that this extra help was there. So, which is very nice, except that there was friction between my client Christy and the nanny. And so this one particular morning, my client Christy went down to the freezer to get ingredients out to make pancakes. And as she approached the freezer, she noticed that the door was open and the items inside were all falling out. And so she went and found her husband and told him about it and complained like the nanny was the last one in there. Like she knew the nanny was the last one in the freezer. And so the husband went to the nanny to talk to her about it. And he was upset because they literally had just been to the grocery store. There were like hundreds of dollars of new groceries in the freezer. And so the nanny, remember I said there's friction, she put little seeds of doubt in the husband's mind that maybe the freezer's broken. So the husband went back to my client, Christy, and said, "Are we sure the freezer isn't broken?" Kind of like innocently, right? But that is where the conversation went sideways and the communication, healthy communication, came to a halt. My client, Christy, lost it. This conversation went from a problem of a freezer door being open, right? Like this is a problem, it's very annoying, but it went from that into something that was highly emotional. My client losing her cool, make it very personal, yelling and blaming her husband for always taking the nanny's side. And as you can see, like all of her resentment just like came spilling out. And so now they were in a full on fight and they did not speak for the rest of the day. It was like literally 11 o'clock at night before they spoke again, which was really sad because they had a wonderful day planned. It was a fall day. They were going to go out and do fun things as a family. And now here they are not talking. And I don't know about any of you, but I have certainly experienced days like that in my own lifetime and in my own relationship, where we start a problem about a conversation about one problem, but we end up on something completely different and blown up and very intensely emotional. And so, how do we stop this from happening? Like, how can we clean up our communication so that we don't have these needless fights that ruin entire days? Today, I'm going to teach you how. And I'm actually going to teach you how it is possible for you to never actually fight with your husband again. Crazy thought. I'm going to teach you my 5 most powerful communication tips. These tips are going to start simply with a foundation for building positive communication in your home. And they're going to progress forward to how to have difficult conversations, because we do have to have the difficult conversations if we want to have connection and everything else. So how can we do that? And with peace, that's the big word I really want to say there, without things getting all emotional out of hand. So this talk is going to help you today if you've ever felt like you can't get through to your husband, or like he never listens to you, or if you lose your cool during difficult conversations, or if you're tired of fighting with your husband. You just want to feel like you're on the same page and you're more connected. And that's something I hear from people who, especially who are parents, is like, I just want to be on the same page with him, especially once kids come along. I think it kind of shows us some of those differences. So let's dive in and talk about our very first tip. And I'm going to give you a new slide. This is, according to Christian author Shanti Feldhahn. She has done social research on this. So that these numbers are literally her research. And that's why I love sharing it, because it's not just some nice idea. And you could even take this to your husband and ask him, if this it resonates with him at all. And so this is highly practical. But what Shanti Feldhahn discovered is that men have this deep need to feel appreciated for what they do. And in fact, 72% of all men say hearing thank you deeply pleases them. And I really hope that you guys can hear that deeply pleases, not like, oh, it's nice when she says thank you. I appreciate it. It's like, it is to him what hearing I love you is to you. And so if you think about how good it feels to hear I love you from your husband, that's how good it feels to him to hear thank you from you. But unfortunately, according to Shanti's research, only 1 in 4 men says that they feel actively appreciated by their family. I'm sure that more of them are appreciated. It's just that maybe we could look at doing a better job of communicating it. And the other statistic was that 44% of men felt unappreciated. And so what I think, this is a great opportunity. I want to say, like, this is great news. And it's not great news that they don't feel appreciated, but it's great news for us because this is an opportunity to directly improve communication in our marriage in a super simple way. Because when our husband is filled up with words of affirmation and appreciation, his ears will be more fully open to hearing what we are trying to say. And so I do recommend trying to find things to appreciate him for daily. Little things. We don't have to go crazy. Things like, you're such a great dad. Thank you for going to work for our family. I love how you handled that meltdown. Thank you for taking out the trash today. Back when many years ago, my husband started making the bed for me because he knew that was something I liked. He really could care less about the bed. But the funny story I love to tell about that is that he would put the pillows on the bed, like in a funny way, like he would make, like, put jeans on them on the pillow, like make him a stick figure and like do all of these really crazy things. And I would text him, thank you so much for making the bed, and like take pictures of it. And it was just like this fun bonding thing that helped us to have improved connection in our relationship. And so the question I get from women a lot on this is, should I thank my husband for things that I expect him to do, like taking out the trash? And I would say, yes, absolutely. What harm could come from thanking him, even if you do expect him to do it? And actually, the whole topic of expectations is a crazy one that we're not going to get into today. But yes, like, we can never go wrong saying thank you. So I would like to share with you how this worked for my client, Kate. She came to me because the communication was slipping in her marriage. She'd been married over 20 years and had 2 adult children. And she was feeling really disconnected from her husband. And they were fighting a lot about, like, everything. And it was to the point where he said he was thinking of leaving her if things didn't change. And he was wondering if they could really make it work if they've been fighting all these years. Like, gosh, if we can't get this figured out now, like, did we make a mistake? I hear that a lot from my clients too. And that scared my client. So we got to work on better communication that will create connection and positivity in the marriage. And so the first step was what I share with you girls today about expressing appreciation more often. Her husband noticed right away, and he also started doing kind gestures for her. And I wanted to share an email that she sent me with you so that you could kind of see in her words what was happening. She says, I feel that things are getting better day by day. We do have occasional setbacks, but I think that we are both feeling a lot more comfortable with communicating. I am seeing a change in him as well. Today, when I got home from work, there was a box on the floor. My husband asked me if I saw it. And I said, yeah, is it something for your truck? And he said, no, it's new brakes for your car. You guys are probably like, brakes for your car? She was excited about that. Yes, she was excited about that because her husband is the kind of a guy who can fix anything. And her car needed new brakes. It was her job to order it. Her and her husband agreed that was going to be her job to order it. But she was busy and hadn't quite gotten to it yet. And he did it for her. And he was so proud of it. And that's what you can tell coming through in this story, is that he wanted to do something to help her. He wanted to do something nice for her. And she said that she did not think that nothing like that was normally happening in her house, and that it wouldn't have happened if she hadn't started working on appreciating him for everything he does. Men love that. They love it. And so I want you to think about expressing appreciation as like a primer in your relationship. Like we're priming the pump, right? We're priming the pump for positive communication in love and connection. And so this is a great way to do it. So next we're going to move on to tip number 2, and I'm going to give you a new slide. Tip number 2, you guys, this is such a magic key. This is like secret sauce that we don't even know is happening. And it is to communicate desires, not complaints. If you were ever a fly on the wall in my home early in my marriage, you would have heard my husband say to me, I can never make you happy. I can't tell you guys how many times I heard that. He was so frustrated with me, but I had no idea why. I really did not understand what was happening. But I have come to learn that that little phrase says a big story about how our man is feeling. It tells us that all he hears from us are complaints and criticism, even though that is not what we intend to be coming out of our mouth. The reason why that happens is because often when a woman wants her husband to do something, the way it just naturally comes out of us is kind of more like a complaint or something we don't want. It's just how our brains are wired. Like nothing has really gone wrong here. It's just like the natural way we talk about things, like, you know, I don't want this, or I don't want that, or I don't want this. And so one example that I love to give, a super simple one, is if you're trying to get everyone ready to leave your house, say to go to church or something, you might say something like, hurry up, I don't want to be late. And to us, it's just the facts, right? Like we're just, come on, everybody, hurry up, don't want to be late. And it's not seen in our mind as anything negative. But this is what men will tell you. Men hear that as a command, a demand, or a complaint. They take it like personally, almost like you are suggesting that they're the reason that you will be late or that they have something to do with it. And so when you know that, you can phrase things differently. And so an example here would be, remember to say what you do want, not what you don't want. So you could say something like, I would love to make it on church time. Got a mouthful there. I would love to make it to church on time today so I can pray before the service starts. When you just say what you want or what you would love, then your husband sees it as an opportunity to make you happy. So do you see the difference? Like the first way is seen by a man as a complaint or a demand, but the second way is just expressing what you want. And it gives us a better chance of getting what we want and keeping connection and intimacy in our marriage and not subconsciously or unintentionally offending our husband. So the secret to expressing our needs is telling our husband what we do want, not what we don't want. This can like drastically change your marriage, because I can guarantee 99% of us do not realize how negative our communication is. Crazy. So use phrases like, I would love, or I appreciate, or even a phrase like, I need help. So I have an example, a client example to share with you. And this is pretty typical in my world. But I had a client who her husband wasn't helping her enough. She was working full time, and then she'd come home, help the kids with the homework and the snacks and make the dinner and do the bedtime and like all the things. And her husband never offered to help. He just stayed on the couch watching TV. So my client was growing more and more resentful because she was doing everything and he was doing nothing. And she thought that he should offer to help. So one night she got particularly upset and made it pretty clear that she was upset. And she was like banging dishes around and pots and pans as she was putting them away and making passive aggressive comments about how nice it would be to be relaxing on the couch after work. That particular night, her husband responded to her comments by saying, maybe if you weren't so negative, someone would want to help you. And that was the eye opener for her, because she realized that the way she was asking for help or assuming he should help was coming off so negative. It like repels them. It makes them want to do less. It pushes them away, and it creates more distance, more fear, more of what we don't want. And I know that's a thing in relationships where we feel like our spouse or our partner should really anticipate our needs and know what our needs are. But the real truth is, if we will just share what's on our heart and what we need, they'll be able to do a better job of giving that to us. And so that was what I taught this client. Just ask for help. Just say, honey, I need help. And this is a really beautiful thing to say because it will allow your husband to do something to make you happy. And here's a secret that kind of take this to the next level. And that is, consider trying, instead of just giving him an assignment saying like, well, you do the dishes and I'll do the baths, or vice versa, tell him what you're trying to accomplish. Men love to solve problems and they love to help. So my client could have said something like, honey, I would love to get the kids to bed by 8 o'clock tonight so I can sit on the couch and relax with you. Will you help me? So simple, right? It's just like saying what you do want. Like, I want to relax with you on the couch. Will you help me? And this works because it tells him what she wants and it gives him an opportunity to help her. And it's so much nicer than banging dishes and pots and pans and complaining and all of that stuff. So when we communicate our desires or what we need, we're opening up communication. This is so huge. I would invite each of you to consider for the next week, just monitoring your communication, just monitoring what comes out of your mouth and try to notice how much is negative and how much is positive, or what's positive and what's negative, and to see if there's any room for improvement for you there. For most of us, there is huge room for improvement here. And just knowing that shifting the way that you say it will allow your husband to hear you, and for his ears to open will be hopefully really exciting to you. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our tip number 3. Whoa. And I am going to give you a new slide. This tip is to communicate side by side. I don't know if you guys have ever heard this before, because a lot of women don't realize this, but men communicate better shoulder to shoulder instead of face to face. Men feel bonding happening when they are sharing an activity side by side. This is a huge difference between men and women. When we meet up with our girlfriends, what happens? We sit across from each other and we talk and we're face to face and we make eye contact. But what do men do when they get together? They do an activity. They go to a ball game. They go fishing. They go golfing. They go hiking. It's something side by side. And that's how they're comfortable. And with men, they don't even always need to be talking when they're doing things. They do, casually, of course, but it's much more comfortable because they're communicating side by side. Men find face-to-face communication with their wives very intense, especially if we're bringing a problem to them. So they will respond better if we will talk to them side by side. So like on a walk. So this is a tip to keep in mind for just general chit chat, daily chit chat, and finding out, what's going on in your husband's life, and also for bringing difficult situations to him. A lot of times when I share this tip with women, they're like, the light bulb goes off. They're like, wait, is this why when we get in bed at night and shut off the lights and we're going to sleep, that he starts singing like a canary and just talking and telling me all about his day? I'm like, yeah, it really could be. It probably is. Because now suddenly he's safe in the dark, side by side. And so it's a really super fun tip to think about and observe in your marriage. Again, like just observe it for a week and see if this will work for you. And so I wanted to share a personal story on this one with you. This was a couple of years ago. I sent my husband and my son shopping for my son's 8th grade graduation suit. And when they came back, they were so excited to show me what they got. And so my son tried it on and came to see me in the room I was sitting in. And I looked at him and I said, looks like he's wearing his father's suit. Now, I didn't think this comment was mean. I wasn't trying to be mean. I was just saying what I saw. Like, it literally looked like a little boy in a man's suit. It was clearly too big all the way around, and in my mind, the longer I could dwell on it, the more frustrated I could get. Like, how could you think this would work? But I didn't mean to be mean. But my husband was offended. It hurt his feelings. He felt like he did his best. He tried to take a job off of my plate, but now I'm not satisfied. And so he walked off in a huff. And after cooling off myself, I wanted to resolve the issue. And so I invited him on a walk. Totally worked, you guys. I said, okay, tell me what's bothering you. because I really didn't think it was mean. And so he explained how he felt, and I was just listening and just trying to understand. And then I asked him, how should I have handled that? Like, what should I have done? Because this is with the way my brain works was like, I, I was all the way at the graduation with my son in the wrong suit. Like my brain just went all the way there, but my husband's was not. It was just in this moment in the room, which is actually kind of a beautiful thing. And so I thought I would share with you what he shared with me in case it helps you, like hearing from a man's perspective. But he said, maybe give it some time before saying what I actually thought, like kind of savor the moment of, the adventure the boys had and being grateful, like a little compliment, like a thank you would have gone a long way. Thank you for doing this. And he said, or maybe you could have said something gently like, oh, that's definitely a great option, guys. And maybe we can continue to look at other options too. He's like, we would have been open to that. But I felt like you just shot it down. And that's when I really knew like he had me nailed, like, because it is how we sometimes, I don't know if any of you guys can relate, but it's like, just like nip it in the bud, fix it, move on. Like we are solving so many problems. And so it really resonated with me when he said that. I was like, okay, like I can really see that. And so I attribute a lot of the health of this conversation, because I've had a lot of others that didn't go so well, to having a safety zone for him to communicate in, where he didn't have to stare in my eyeballs and see all of the craziness that's happening here. Because I don't know about you guys, but as hard as I try, my face tells a lot of stories. So I want you guys to maybe observe this in your relationship in the next week. And if you have any trouble communicating, maybe this can be a tip that gives you some freedom and gives your husband some safety and will help you keep the channels of communication open. And so that's what we've really done in these first 3 tips today of communicating our appreciation and communicating our desires instead of complaints and communicating side by side. These 3 tips together work together to create positive atmosphere in your marriage, a positive communication environment, and they will prime the pump for those conversations that might be more difficult. So speaking of which, let's move on. I bet you want to hear about that too. I'm going to give you a new slide. So this is tip number 4. It is how to have a difficult conversation, because this is an important aspect of communication, and many of us were never taught this before. What I want to do with this step is give you some perspective and also a step-by-step formula on how to have a difficult conversation so that you can bring more peace and connection into your marriage. So there are 5 steps here for how to have a difficult conversation. I would say step 1 might be the most difficult, at least in the beginning, and that is to give up the need to be right. This is a natural human thing. Oftentimes, when we are engaged in a disagreement with someone, our human nature drives us with this need to be right. But I want to make a proposal to you. If there is a winner and a loser in your communication with your husband, there are really 2 losers, right? We are together. We are on the same team. So if you could give up the need to be right, you are immediately going to remove this need for defensiveness and playing defense in your conversations. And this is huge. This is a very big step. I am asking for you to consider to be the leader and just give it a try. And don't worry, you are going to get to say what you need to say. But the first thing we want to do is open up your brain to be able to hear it and to be able to think about a response that will be healthy instead of just coming off of defense. I actually love this step. It's so freeing just to take a deep breath and stand back and just give up that need to be right. So then step 2 is to ask your spouse to tell you his side of the story, like I did on the walk. Tell me what's going on. Tell me everything. Like listen to him to understand him. This is great for connection, right? Like we want to understand where his brain is, what he's thinking, and just listening with this freedom of not having to defend yourself, just with curiosity. Like, I just want to understand. It's so freeing. I would also encourage you, if this helps you, put yourself in his shoes And imagine the scenario from his perspective. The times that I have done that in my marriage, which is often, it really shifts your perception, and it helps you put on compassion, I think, so that while you're resolving this conflict, coming from a place of compassion and peace is going to resolve it much more quickly and much more peacefully and effectively. So then, once he's told you everything he has to say about it and you've just listened, the third step is to pull out what are the facts in the story and make sure you can agree on them. So this is helpful because this might be a new definition to you, but for the purposes of this conversation, facts are neutral. They are common ground. They are something that could be proven in a court of law if like there was a video camera running on your life for the entire day. So the benefit of thinking of it this way is that it takes the drama out and it allows you to have more peace in the conversation. We'll get to the drama, don't you worry. But for now, let's just look at the facts. So here's a super simple example. If your husband said that he would be home for dinner at 6 p.m., but he wasn't home until 7 p.m., those are facts, plain and simple. In our court of law, we could play the tape back and see that conversation happen in the morning where he said that he would be home at 6. And then we could continue watching that tape when it's 6 p.m. and he doesn't walk in that door, or at 6:10 or 6:20 or 6:30. And we would still be watching the tape when he finally rolled in at 7 p.m. And so just looking at the facts like that are plain and simple, no drama. Like, this is the problem. You promised you'd be home at this time. You came home at this time. Once you have that and you've both agreed on it, yes, those are the facts. That's what I said. That's what happened. Like, those are the facts, no drama, still calm. The next step is to say what you are making the facts of the situation mean. This is where the drama comes in. And this is where our feelings come in. And we realize stories that we tell ourselves in our head come in. And so for this example, after you have agreed on the facts, you might say to your husband, I am making this mean that you don't care about me. I am making this mean that you don't respect me and my time. So that tells your husband the story that you are telling yourself about the facts that happened. This is so powerful. It gives you so much information. And so then your husband could say to you, babe, I was in a meeting and, right up until the very end, and I absolutely respect you and didn't mean to make you mad or make you feel that way. Like, he will tell you what was happening on his side. Or he might say, I had no idea you were waiting, or I had no idea it cared. And that's just that you cared so much. I wanted to finish that sentence. So now you're hearing from his side, he didn't mean to hurt you on purpose. He made a judgment call based on what was happening in his world. And so now we have all of the facts and we have all of the drama, if you will, that both of us are making it mean out on the table. And so this way you can just really see that you both weren't trying to hurt one another. And that's really what I want you to see is our brains tell us all these crazy stories about reasons why people do things. And most of the time they're false, like literally most of the time. And so the fifth step, this is super important, and this one's going to take some work. The fifth step is to come up with a solution. But in order to do that, we have to stop talking about the problem. And this is where fights come in. This is where we go wrong. This is what happens. We say, then, we get agitated and we say, well, you always do this to me. And we bring in other scenarios. And I will encourage you, stay focused on this one scenario, stay focused right here. And once you have the facts and the drama, switch gears and focus on the solution. Because when we get sucked into continuing to beat it up and make our point and be defensive and all of this stuff, that's when all of the drama gets out of hand. And so much easier to come up with a solution that you can both agree to. How are you and your husband going to solve the problem of him coming home late without warning? Do you need a text message from him? Do you want him to estimate later for you instead of earlier? Like, don't tell me you're going to be home at 6 if it's not possible, right? Tell me 7. Then I'll be so happy if you show up at 6. Or do you need to plan to have a babysitter at the house just in case? I know I personally have been in this little situation when like I had like a mom's night out or something like that, and he's not there to relieve me. And now I'm stuck and not getting to go where I want to go. And then you get all angry, right? And we make up all these crazy stories. So, what could a solution be that will work for you and your husband that is a win-win-win for everybody? And the beautiful thing is once you come up with your solution, you're done. You don't have to beat the problem till you go mad with it. You don't have to fight about it. You can just sit down to come up with a solution. It's so awesome. But I know that anger does come involved in life. And so we're going to go to tip number 5 next, and we're going to talk about that. I'm going to give you a new slide. What do we do when tempers flare? So let's say you tried really hard to have that conversation. You try to keep the peace, but your emotions got the better of you, or they got the better of your husband, and it went south. What do you do then? Should you stay up all night and duke it out? Do you have to, resolve it before either of you can move on in your day? How do you calm the tempers down and get back to a peaceful conversation and connection and intimacy? Differences of agreement and things happen. Like we're gonna hurt each other's feelings. Like this is totally gonna happen. But we want to be able to control and manage these conversations so they don't drive us further apart. Instead, they bring us closer together. I want to dispel a popular myth in culture. We hear people say out there, don't go to bed mad. And we also think the Bible tells us don't go to bed mad. But does it? I want to look at this. Ephesians 4:26 says, be angry and yet do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. And so this verse makes it seem like we should duke it out until the issue is resolved. But I don't think that's what it really means for us to do. Because taking a break from an argument when both spouses are being rational and upset can be one of the healthiest choices we can make. In fact, I think the Bible supports this. Psalm 4:4 says, don't sin by letting anger gain control over you. Think about it overnight and remain silent. Did you guys ever hear that one? Isn't that freeing? What? Think about it overnight and remain silent? It might literally be overnight, or it just might be like during the day, but you know how this goes. Like sometimes things feel so much worse when we're in the heat of the moment. We say things that we can't take back and we might later regret. So taking a break when we get all angry allows us to refresh our mind and calm our soul so that we can have a more productive discussion and come to a solution, right? You guys, my client, Joni, had to work really hard on this one. She would walk away from an argument, like she was really working on that, but her husband just could not let it go. He would send her angry texts and email messages like all night long. He'd go sleep in another room and be sending her all these angry texts and emails until she learned how to put a healthy boundary in place. She told him that she would be happy to finish the conversation when both of them were calm, but not before, and that she would no longer respond to angry texts or emails. She was responding, she thought she had to, but we put a healthy boundary in place, and that is for the benefit of both of them. And it has not been easy because it's hard when you have, a lot of emotions flaring, but it has created so much more peace for her. And there's something I want to share with you about, like, what do you do in the in-between, or how do you get back to that calm and that peace? So this is like a bonus tip, really. And that is grab a journal it out, get all your frustrations out, or call a friend and make sure it's a friend who's going to be for your marriage and not just say, oh yeah, that guy is a total jerk. Never, you should just leave him. Just making sure that it's a friend who will support you in your marriage and listen to you and validate you and your feelings and let you vent, but then help you maybe to see the other side or just get to a more calm place. Also, obviously, you can use a counselor or a coach. The emotions are important. They're a sign and a signal, and we don't want to stuff anything and we don't want to sweep anything under the rug because that always comes back. And so this tip of taking a break from an argument and maybe doing the inner work before you pick up the conversation is going to help you do less damage to your marriage and create a better and healthier and more loving environment for communication. So I'm going to give you a new slide. Those are my 5 tips, just to show you like a little wrap them up. So the first tip is to communicate appreciation and admiration often. Communicate desires instead of complaints. Communicate side by side. Then I gave you a formula for having a difficult conversation and taught you what to do when tempers do flare. I hope that this was inspiring and that it helps you feel hopeful for improving the communication. And if you think you need a little bit more help, I am offering a limited number of complimentary marriage consultations where you and I can talk about like what's going on in your marriage and see if personalized coaching will help you. I'll put the link to my calendar in the chat box and you can schedule an appointment that way, or you can just always email me. And so that's it for the formal part of the presentation today. We can jump into answering our Q&A questions. And so first I am going to start by stopping the recording.